My name is Sammy Ijaz, and I'm your host for House of Politics. House of Politics is a talk show that brings on government officials from MPs, MPPs, mayors, councillors, interviews them on what they've accomplished in their years of service and what they're willing to do in the future and what they're up to today. Today we have Sean O'Meara from Oakville, who is the regional councillor of Ward 1, joining us today in a conversation. How are you, Sean?
I'm great, Sammy. Thanks for having me on.
Sean, usually I like to do this. Why don't you give me your finest wink in that camera?
My finest wink?
The nicest wink you have. Hey! Well, Sean, I want to thank you for taking your time and being here. I want to take you right back to where you were born, where'd you grow up, and where'd you go to school?
Perfect. So I was born actually in Peterborough, and then my parents moved to Oakville in '81, so I was about 2 years old at the time. Okay. Spent some time, one of the reasons we came here was the schooling system, so I spent some time at Appleby College, an old boys school, and then transferred over to Queen Elizabeth Park, and then Blakelock High School, did my schooling there, and then found myself off to the University of Guelph for an undergrad degree and a BA in honors degree in politics, and then went over to Europe and I did a master's degree in Northern Ireland, and I studied ethnic conflict and international relations, and then came back, and of course, you know, it's not always easy to jump right into a professional career with that, so I went and did 4 years of a PhD at Queen's in international relations.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so I did a lot of schooling at the time, and you know, met my wife in my undergrad, and when we were looking, you know, where's the best place that we would want to get together and live and raise a family, it's funny how you come back from where you first started. So we came back to Oakville in 2009, and it's been home ever since. Right.
So now Ward 1, I guess when you moved back, Ward 1 was home.
Ward 1 has been home ever since there. Yeah.
Ever since. And when did you move back to Oakville?
So in 2009. We bought a house there. Yeah.
Okay. So 09, and then in 2014 you decided to run for. 2014, you decided to run for regional councillor of Ward 1 in Oakville. Prior to that, what were you up to?
So I got back in 2009 when we bought a house there, and you know, I was working for a great family business in town here, Corbett's Source for Sports. Right. And I began working and speaking with our MPP, who was Kevin Flynn at the time, and got involved at his constituency office and got involved in community politics, and spent a few years working with him. And then I found myself at Tim Hortons head office. So I was doing their government affairs work at the head office there. And as many of us know, they went through a bit of a change there and at the corporate structure. And found myself back at Queen's Park for a little bit. And the opportunity came in 2014. The municipal politics were, the election was starting. And I remember looking at my wife, and she was on a mat leave, and I just started a new job, and said, I think I want to quit the job I just started while you're on mat leave. And what do you think about me running for council? And God bless her, she said, if that's what you want to do, then give it a shot. So that's led me here. Right.
So now 2014 happened. Who were you up against?
So I was up against a two-term incumbent who had been working for the area there. You know, a very nice man, and had nothing against him, but I just thought that I could do a good job and a better job, and I thought that you know, there was a real key piece that we had been missing in the area, and that was a Wycroft Bridge extension across Bronny Creek, and you know, we may talk about it a little later, but that was the pivotal linchpin for my campaign. There was a bridge that was approved 20 years plus, and nothing had happened on it, and every day we saw congestion. So I ran on that campaign and was successful, and spent the first 4 years of my term trying to implement that promise.
So was that a problem, and that's what was that the one thing that got you into the idea of politics? Because I mean, before you ran for a councillor, regional councillor in 2014, you were already involved in politics. So I think what drew you from, I guess, being involved with Queen's Park and your MPP to councillor?
Well, was
it just the opportunity, or was this one of the issues that really got you going?
It was. I mean, there was probably a number of reasons why I thought I would like to be a councillor. I liked the role of community building, and I liked serving the constituents. But then when I, you know, was doing my due diligence on a lot of issues, and people from working in a provincial office, they would come in and say, "Why is this traffic so bad?" And then when I was doing the research and found that this was already on the books, I just that kind of pushed me over the top and said, "All right, this has to get done. And if nobody's willing to make this a priority, I'll make it a priority."
What's your favorite thing about Oakville?
Well, my favorite thing about Oakville, gosh, I think it is bar none the best place to raise a family.
Yeah.
I think that we're one of the safest communities in Canada.
Crime rate is almost none to zero.
And the clearance rate is the best in Canada. The parks, our infrastructure in terms of ice rinks and soccer fields and the harbors. I mean, I walk with my family every day down there. I don't think there's a better place.
It's a family town.
It is, and you know what? You're a GO train rider. I have seasons tickets to Toronto FC, and I'm on the GO train down there, once a month in the summer cheering on the team. And so you've got that access, but when you want to come home to a little serenity, you've got your own sanctuary.
Right. 1981, you guys moved to Oakville.
Yes.
You moved with your parents.
Yes.
Then you, I guess, moved out of Oakville to explore. As you said, you went international to study. You went all over the place, and then 2009 you came back to Oakville, and then 2014 you ran for elections. The transformation from 81 till 2019. Paint that picture for me.
Well, it's funny because I tend to throw it back in some people's face now when they say, look what's happening north of Dundas. That's not the Oakville. And I said, well, when I was in the 80s and we'd say, look what's happening north of the Queen Elizabeth. That's not the Oakville. I mean, it's a steady progression. We live in one of the most diverse places in the entire world in the GTHA, and people want to live here. And Halton and Oakville have to do their share to grow. It's not about if we change, it's how we change. And I think we've been pretty good stewards of our community through the decades. It certainly is changing, and I think it's changing for the best in terms of the faces you see around here. There's more diversity, which brings multiculturalism, more inclusion. My children are seeing and learning and tasting things that I never grew up to. It was a meat and potatoes household, and now I go for roti, or we get some jerk chicken, or we have it's incredible, right? So there's a lot of benefit here, but there is an element of people who will always resist change, and it's about listening to them, but understanding we got to move forward. Right.
And has there been any hurdles in this transformation?
Absolutely. I mean, the growth pressures on us are at times almost unbearable. The demands as well on the supply. I mean, it used to be you worry about hockey and hockey rinks and soccer fields and baseball diamonds.
And now people are requesting cricket.
Where do we get a cricket pitch, right? Where do we, how do we do some of these other things that we have to adjust to? And so we're working with those struggles, but it doesn't come easily. That's for sure.
Right. Sean, if you don't mind, can we take a quick break?
Absolutely.
Should we take a break?
Sure.
You want to do the outro, or do you want me to do it?
No, you.
Well, there you have it. We're here with Sean O'Meara, who's the regional councillor of Ward 1 in Oakville. We'll be right back after this break. We'll be discussing education, taxes, and much more, such as infrastructure and services not matching the residential growth. See you soon in a bit. Welcome back to House of Politics. My name is Sammy Ijaz. Joined here today with me is Sean O'Meara from Oakville, who is the regional councillor of Ward 1. Sean, thank you so much for being here. Let me dive right into education. Education seems to be one of the largest topics, whether it's whatever tier of government, provincial, municipal, federal. It seems to be one of those things that is affecting parents, it's affecting students, it's affecting teachers. Classroom sizes are growing and increasing from 22 to 28. They're trying to average 25 now. Loans and grants that were given at, let's say, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 have been decreased by $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. People are shoveling money out of their own pockets. Where do you stand on education? How important do you feel education is for the province of Ontario?
Well, I mean, speaking more as a parent and as a former OSAP payer backer.
Yeah, likewise, yeah,
it's,
absolutely.
It was 13 years of paying $700 a month back, which retards the ability to have a home, to pay car insurance, to do these things. So, the knock-on effect is quite long when you burden students with overabundance of student loans. But and even as a father of a 6 and 8 year old, there are many needs, and I don't think any is more important than education. And when you give kids the right platform and you teach them to understand how the world works. And it's not just STEM, it's how to read and how to write and to appreciate art. I think we just set ourselves up for a more educated society, which again will transcend our economy to different places. So, you know, we feel the pressures as a parent, and again, you know, as a counselor, we are usually the first voice that people will go to express their,
blame
their dissatisfaction with these sorts of things. So, you know, trying to have an understanding that being fiscally responsible is very important too. You know, a lot of this does come. I mean, health and education provincially make up 60% of our entire budget. So whenever you're going to look to try and get some fiscal reins back on what's happening, you're going to look in those two ones. But those are the proverbial third rail people. You know, don't touch my kids' education and don't touch my health care. So I don't envy the situation the province is in. But having said that, you know, I don't think taking it out on the students is the way to go, or harming the way and the size that they can learn in schools is the way to go.
Well, let's start with your you know, middle schools and high schools. Oakville has seen a new high school be made, and when we look at high schools, we often look at it as a initiative of a counselor, mayor, or regional counselor. But it seems that you guys have built this school. It's a new school, which means that you know what the demand of the students are. It's not that the school was built 15 years ago and you don't know the demand and the transformation that we were talking about that has happened. Which means that if you require spaces for, let's say, 1,500 people, should the system and should the infrastructure not be set out that we actually create the school aligned with the guideline and criterion of the demand? Because right now you've got 41 portables in that school. So how do you justify that?
Well, it's, you know, again, you know, we as the local planning authority, which is all we as a council are, is we grant and ensure that the developments that are happening are meeting the applicable laws and bylaws. And we, again, must abide to our overlords, the province. So when we make people declare land surplus for a school in a new community, that land will stay there. But if the province isn't stepping up to the plate and saying, okay, here's the capital expense to build the school, then that land just goes to wasteland. And in my neighborhood in Lakeshore Woods, we've had a property where a school should have been built for 11 years. 11 years it sat there, and the community expected a school to get built, and it hasn't.
So that sort of blame and the accusation comes on to the councillor of that ward, stating, you know, we've got land for 11 years, but you're doing nothing with it. But they don't realize that you've done your part, but now it's if the province doesn't give that transfer, that money, it's not going to happen.
No, it's no. And if they don't pay to fix them, and we have new communities coming on at the Saulwick Golf Course, again, there's a plot of land that is being held for a school to be built there. There is no guarantee whatsoever that the province is going to build that school when those residents move in there. And there's an expectation as a resident moving or buying a new house here, and you see a sign, home of a future school, you think this is going to be great, there's going to be school. And now the developers are getting a little, they're getting smarter on this. Now they put a clause in there where if a school hasn't been built in 7 years, they get the land back and they can do whatever they want with it. So then build more houses. So so that's a little.
So how do you overcome that? Because, you know, when people buy homes, it's not they're buying a home or a house, it's they're buying a dream. You know, a lot of these individuals, the first-time home buyers, or they're moving from a small home to a larger home, they're not buying just a house. They're buying a dream where their kids would live, where they would, you know, they would grow, they would go to school, and they're in their mind, they're going, you know, I've got a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old. When she or he becomes 11 or 8 or 9 or whatever it is, they'll go to this particular school because we know there's a school coming. But in 7 years, when that school is not built, it's given back to the developer. How do you overcome that?
Well, you know, and I'm never shocked at people who make the largest investment of their lives don't look into a lot of stuff there, and whether there's an apartment building that can be built right behind where they've just bought and they didn't realize it when they bought, or the fact that there's no guarantees a school is going to be built there. You know, there is some due diligence that has to be done on the people who are moving into these communities. But from our perspective, we continue to advocate to the province and say you have to build complete communities. From an environmental and climate change standpoint, you've got buses running all day long shipping kids 6 kilometers when they all should be walking or they should be on their bikes.
Right.
You're approving new builds, so in that capacity, give us the tools to let the developer and the people who are profiting off of these, help make complete communities. And some of the development communities I've talked to want to do that. They said, hey, if you can help us with how we're going to develop this community, and if there's a school need there, maybe we can help build the school. There's a lot of options out there, but we live under constraining times right now, and there's a lot of rules and regulations, and there's some competing interests going on. So, we look to our provincial partners to allow us to do the job that we and our residents want us to do, and that's to build complete communities.
Right. Absolutely. Infrastructure, tell me if you agree or disagree with the statement. Infrastructure and services do not match the residential growth.
No, and plain and simple, they don't match the residential growth because we can't build a lot of these so-called soft services. So if we talk about recreation centers, libraries, parks, we don't get those until we've collected our DCs, or development charges.
Right.
And normally we don't get the development charges until the homeowner who's purchased the home has inserted the key, opened the door, and they go, and then the DCs get to released. So
and that too, it takes probably a couple of months to actually process.
But then to start planning and developing, I mean, we can't start spending money on
the planning process.
Designing a building if we don't have the money. So once we've got the money, then that process starts. You might be 10 years out by the time we've got the money to full completion of a community center.
Right.
And again, with the changes under Bill 108, now the community benefits plan, they've taken away our ability to charge on those soft services. Again,
so Bill 108 is a provincial bill.
It is, yeah.
That is implemented on you as a regional councillor and municipal government.
Yes.
And that takes away the soft services.
It toggles with the development charge, with the number of planning, but it toggles with
the
what
actual
we can
monetary
get
that you guys get.
That we can get from the development charges.
Right.
So right now we are only able to get about 85% of 100% for new growth. So every time a new house is built, the whole envelope that it costs to support that new house, we get about 85% off the top. The other 15% comes from every single taxpayer's tax base.
So where if you guys collect 100%, then you don't have to touch the taxes, and you don't have to nail the residents that are already existing in Oakville.
That's right.
Because that 15% is coming out of their
That's right.
tax
It comes.
money.
Yeah. That's just the only cost theoretically on your municipal tax bill would be what inflationary pressures are rising, unless the municipality wants to venture into a new capital plan or increase a service or add. That would be where but right now a certain percentage of everybody's municipal tax bill goes to offset new growth in the region.
Is there a solution to this? In regards to Bill 108 is in play. You're not able to get your development charges on time. People move in, their kids are 2, now they're 12. They were expecting a park to be made. My question has always been, you can build 800 homes, but we can't build a small little park for those 800 homes, or 2 or 3 parks, because the parks don't cost a whole lot of money, but you need initial money to start those parks. So is it like in the perfect world, give me this perfect world, Sean, in the perfect world, how would you do it?
Well, I mean, so the town doesn't get any of that land until after a development's past the site of subdivision, so that we couldn't even touch that property. It's not ours. We get the land given to us when the whole thing is done, and then at that point, we can start to go ahead and do the planning. But again, these soft costs around Bill 108 and the community benefit plan, those have to go to the tax base. And out of the DCs, we pay roads and hydro and fire and light posts and garbage and snowplow and the whole gamut of things. So, one thing we've done with our new allocation plan at the region is we're front-ending the cost of the roads. So instead of having to wait to build new roads until, again, the key is unlocked and people are getting their homes, we're building the roads first now so that people can get to where they need to go.
House.
And to their new house, yeah. So it's, we're trying to flip it on its head a bit, but again, we're up against a pretty strong lobby in the development community. They want to build houses, they want to sell these houses, they want to make their money and move on to the next build, and we're left with what's left over.
Transit. How is the transit in Oakville? Are people complaining? Is there any issues or is there any concerns in regards to, let's say, local transit versus go transit?
So there's always pressures with transit. I mean, we're actually at the town, we're undergoing an urban mobility study, and what our big issue is that what we call the first and last mile. How do you get people who take the GO train to get that extra kilometer, 2 kilometers to where they're working, all along the north and south service corridors, down the Brawny Road, down Third Line to where they live. How do you get people up to the GO stations without having to take a car? So we've undertook an urban mobility study to look at just that. I was at a meeting last week with the Oakville Chamber of Commerce. We had the president of Geotab there. We've had a lot of digital companies talking about automation. What is it that we can do as a community and private-public partnerships? Ford of Canada was there. What can we do? How can we get, what we're working on R&D wise to maybe feed into the urban mobility strategy?
So would that be a local transit kind of bus that would take those individuals to?
It could be. It could be a hail system, a ride system. It could be, again, we're talking about, we're not in a 5G world yet, but when we get there, what does automation look like? How do we get sort of like Uber pool vehicles to come into the communities and get them out to the arterial roadways? So, we subsidize Oakville Transit to the tune of about $23 million a year. We get $7 million in paid fees, and it's $30 million line item. So we're $23 million to subsidize the Oakville Transit, and every day here, there's not enough buses, there's not enough transit. So it's the chicken and the egg story. If you need to get more users, you need to make it efficient, and you need to get people where they, but then you need the cost. You can't keep subsidizing it off of the tax base. So
taxes, are people okay with taxes?
I've never met a single person in my life who's okay with taxes.
I mean, like compared to the services and infrastructure that you guys are building for these these residents of Oakville, are they satisfied with the taxes?
Well, we continue to get our resident survey results are coming in the high 90s, 96% satisfaction surveys. So I think it's incredible. I think people are satisfied with the level of services they're getting. We're also, for the past 5 or 6 years, we've been consistently the lowest tax rate of all the Halton municipalities, and we continue to keep our directives at or under the rate of inflation. So considering the pressures we're facing, I think we've done yeoman's work in making that balance. But people understand. You want to have good ice rinks. You want to have loose leaf pickup that goes into the winter. You want to have snow plowed and sidewalks. It costs money, and when 60% of your entire budget is labor as well, you need people to do the jobs. We're kind of hamstrung, and those people get a rate increase. So I think we've been able to balance it as fairly as possible, and but we'll always continue to drive and look for efficiencies.
Well, that's good. Briefly tell me, what is 2020 looking like for you?
Well, 2020.
What would you like to achieve in 2020?
So 2020, actually, regionally, we have a lot to do. We're going to be jumping right into our regional official plan. Around the Brawny GO station as well, that's been designated as a major transit study area. So we're going to have 150 people in jobs per hectare right at the Brawny GO station. That's going to be a rather large undertaking. I would like to see the Brawny Village area reinvigorated a little bit. I'd like to see some street revitalization, and I'd also like to continue to see the Palermo area, which is Dundas and Brawny Road, get finalized with some of its lockups in terms of its official plan. We're going back and forth legally with retail, commercial, and eventually we're going to have a library and a community center there, and I know the people in North Oakville are dying for one of those. So those are my priorities for 2020.
Well, that's fantastic. I want to thank you so much for being here and for your time, and I look forward to having you in 2021 to look at what we had accomplished in 2020.
Let's do it again.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And there you have it, Sean O'Mara from Oakville Regional Councillor Ward 1. Thank you so much for watching this show. We will have another government official next week here with us. We'll find out his story or her story. Keep watching House of Politics. Leave your comments in the box below because I love reading your comments. And if you have any concerns or questions, email us at info@canada1.tv. Thank you very much.